Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome back to a lot of you. We've been seeing you all coming back for more and more. And this is one such session where I'm so excited about. And this is day 4 of our present practice prosperity series. Today, we turn our focus to a subject that is both timely and essential. Navigating complexity, team coaching in high-stakes environments. Global research shows that nearly 70% of change initiatives fail, not because of strategy or intent, but because people and teams struggle to align, adapt, and stay resilient in the face of disruption. And yet, when teams function well, the opposite is true. Studies by McKinsey indicate that high-performing teams can improve organizational outcomes by up to 30%, especially when transformation efforts put people and collaboration at the very center. Gallup adds to this with data showing that engaged, high-trust teams are 21% more productive and achieve significantly higher customer satisfaction. So the stakes are high. But what makes team coaching distinct from facilitation or consulting is its ability to work inside the system. It's not about solving problems for the team. It's about enabling the team to see themselves more clearly, navigate their dynamics, and unlock their collective intelligence. For the coach, this means holding presence while the stakes are high, creating psychological safety amidst tension and contracting with multiple stakeholders who may not always agree. It is both demanding and deeply rewarding. At Guiding Light, we believe this conversation is especially important here in India. While team coaching is recognized and widely practiced in global coaching markets, it remains nascent in India. And that is why we're bringing this stellar panel to you today, to go beyond theory and listen to the lived experiences of practitioners who have navigated complexity firsthand, to understand the frameworks, choices, and presence required in these high-stakes settings. And most importantly, to invite each of us, whether exploring, in training, or already practicing, to see the possibilities of what team coaching can bring to our clients and to our profession. It's now my privilege to introduce our moderator for this evening, Mahrukh Bandorawalla. Can we have her with me? Mahrukh is an MCC with over 3,000 hours of coaching experience. She's an executive and leadership coach, mentor and trainer, facilitator, and OD consultant with a distinguished 30-year career in human resources. She's worked with people-centric organizations such as Thermax and Siemens. She partners with clients to expand their awareness, explore new possibilities, and create sustainable, actionable pathways for growth. Her coaching spans CXOs to emerging leaders across diverse industries. Mahrukh actively contributes her time and expertise to pro bono coaching with UNICEF, UNDP, and other UN agencies. She's a visiting faculty at TIS and has delivered programs at leading management schools in Bombay. She's also a master NLP practitioner, a master of transformational coaching, and holds certifications in multiple psychometric tools. Who better but Mahrukh to navigate this conversation for us? And I'm proud to say that Mahrukh and I were batchmates in training for our team coaching together. Over to you, Mahrukh.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone, to this panel discussion. Peter Senge once said that today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. A powerful reminder that in complex systems, linear fixes rarely work. So team coaching basically invites us to look at teams through a systemic lens with patterns, relationships, and blind spots that are living parts of the larger ecosystem. And today, our panel of extremely seasoned team coaches will actually share practical strategies, the challenges they have faced, and real world stories to illustrate how team coaching can help organizations thrive in a complex environment. This conversation is going to be far more nuanced as compared to some of the panel discussions some of you may have attended on team coaching that we did earlier. And we're really going to hear from the masters, how they navigate this minefield, if you will. So I would request all the team coaches to please introduce themselves before we jump into the topic.
Putting me on the spot first, is it, Mahrukh? I mean, first of all, it's just so overwhelming, Mahrukh, to have said seasoned, experienced. I'm sure there's far more experience with the group who's here. So, it is just what it is. So hopefully, some bit of experiences quite happy to share. From an introduction standpoint, just want to introduce myself as one of your colleagues who loves the space of working with people, who I truly believe in the systemic space in terms of how impactful or how it sort of changes everything. So whether it's in teams or with individuals, and most of my practices around team coaching or group work plus emotional intelligence. That's the areas on which I work.
Thank you, Ramesh. That was so typically you, so humble. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm sure we're going to really see some very interesting insights emerging from you. Who'd like to go next? And may I request everybody else to please stay on mute? Thank you so much.
Every time this bit of, introducing myself, I've done it many, many times, but yet every time I get stuck, okay, what do I now say to this group? What's really relevant? Like Ramesh, I really don't want to take too much of time in my introduction. Yeah, obviously, I think being here talking about team coaching, yes, I'm a credentialed team coach. I'm a credential, master certificate coach very recently. Have some X number of hours to my credit, both in my team coaching and in my one-on-one coaching practice. I've had the privilege to do a lot of facilitation work over my career. Been blessed to move across different industries, handle different kind of teams across geographies, had a lot of learning experience and unlearning experience, which has really helped to become the person who I am today. Yeah, anything more, I think I'll be happy to share my LinkedIn. Please feel free to, know more about me on what I shared, and I'll feel happy to get connected with you as well.
Thank you, Sudha. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. An absolute pleasure to be here. What I'm sharing today is coming from a place of experience more than expertise. So, a quick one about my background, about 25 years in the behavioral space, human behavior space, and of which about 12 years has been in the space of coaching. A master certified coach, a team coach, coach educator, coach supervisor, and co-founder of an organization called Orenda, where we curate leadership journeys for leaders across levels, geographies. And I'm very inspired to be working in the systemic team coaching space. Coaching any individual or team, I think the work simply inspires me for the effort everybody takes, for the courage that they bring into their journeys, really to discover themselves, whether it's individual or team, and to be the best version of themselves. I keep telling myself that's why I'm in this space of coaching. Over to you, Mahrukh.
Thank you, Priya. And the word that has stayed with me is courage, because I'm a rookie team coach, and I'm realizing this is a very different space, which in some ways requires you to show up a little differently. So as we have a fairly diverse audience, let's really jump into exploring what are those differences. So what exactly is team coaching? Let's spend some time understanding and then move on to the high stakes piece of it. So Ramesh, let me begin with you, as you were in the spotlight right at the beginning. What is the difference between one-on-one, team, and group coaching? Very briefly.
Sure. So one-on-one, I think everybody understands. It is when you work at an individual level. The difference between team and groups, or when you work with coach groups or teams, is that a team is an integral unit, which typically has an outcome which is defined either by themselves or the organization itself. So they're all working towards a similar goal, and normally it's an organizational goal. They're part of a unit. And when I say organization, it's not just corporates, right? It could be any organization. It could be even something like, for example, the society executive committee in your building. That could be a team by itself. Group is a group of individuals who have a theme which is similar to each other. And typically in group coaching, at the end of at the end of the coaching session, each of them goes out with their own specific actions which are not necessarily aligned at all. It's a completely different, it could be very different for each other. So, but the theme is the same. So you work on the same theme. So for example, somebody is struggling with, let's say, as a group, they're struggling with, what do you call it? Let me pick up a corporate example. Delegation, right? For example. So how do you work with them to help them define what would delegation look like? What is it that they're going to do differently? Each one will be different. So that's the difference.
Ramesh, just a small add-on question. In terms of degree of complexity from a coaching perspective, is there a varying degree, or you do think they're all equally challenging?
So the stakes are higher in team coaching because as we always see, especially in high stake environments, people do pull in different directions because each of them has an individual agenda. In group coaching, it's not so. The agenda is the topic which you're working with. So it's a little more easier. It's far more easier to build psychological safety, for example, than with teams. The stakeholder context is not that relevant. So bringing in stakeholders into the room sometimes may not, or in most cases actually is not even necessary because each person will have a different type of stakeholder. So those are differences. So yeah, group coaching is a little more easier, a little more easier also to design because there is some pattern which you can follow, at least from a facilitation standpoint through the day. In team coaching, you can do what you like, but at the end of it, it goes the way it needs to.
Right, right. So it has a mind of its own, and therefore complexity in a hierarchy is much more.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you use the word facilitation. Now, as coaches, as HR folks, we use all these words interchangeably very often. So you have team building, you have team facilitation, you have team consulting. Maybe Priya, if I can request you, how is team coaching different from these?
In a way, Mahrukh, except for team consulting, which is very much diagnostic and you offer some remedies, some ways of moving forward. You offer, the consultant offers. Whereas in team coaching, we are saying there is a bit of facilitation because you're holding a large group together. And so to set the ways of working and deciding the ways of working together, sometimes it's necessary to use some facilitative tools or ways of facilitation. So it is, so facilitation is a part of team coaching. Like I said, consulting is completely out of scope. I think this is probably the fundamental difference. And we are saying that it's a combination. We are doing parts of the sessions are facilitative in nature as a facilitator. Parts of it is coach-like, where you're inviting insights and creating awareness. And you're holding the space quite apparently in a structured way. And that can move, right? The multiple moving parts, like you mentioned.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Priya. So, Sudha, this is a question for you. How do you decide when a team is ready for team coaching vis-a-vis, say, a facilitation intervention or consulting intervention? What are those indicators? What are the signs?
Yeah. Am I audible, Mahrukh?
Yes,
Am I
Sudha.
audible? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just adding and picking up on what Priya was highlighting, right? Except for consulting, which is very distinct, and of course, training also, is part of sometimes team coaching, but it's also very distinct in the way it is offered. Typically, if I need to use the word, okay, what is that I listen for when I'm talking to probably a sponsor or probably a team leader or the team themselves, to know whether team coaching is what is going to really help them is typically if I'm seeing some interpersonal issues or lack of trust, I'm hearing words like, oh, people operate in silos, or it's like, it's not that they don't know how to do the task, but they have challenges in how they relate, um, how they communicate, how they think and act together. There are patterns of blame, or there's avoidance of either conflict or conflict not being really managed well, and frequent escalations, um, lack of ownership, lack of trust. I think all of these are signs or words that I hear or look for to know uh, if team coaching is the right solution. Um, like how Priya was mentioning, right? It's not that facilitation is away from team coaching. In fact, in the ICF team competencies document, if you see, they clearly say that there may not be a crisp distinction uh, between team coaching and facilitation. Rather, um, it's more like a continuum, between facilitation and team coaching. And a good team coach, they know seamlessly, where to work and how to move in this continuum. So that's how I would look for Mahrukh. So if I need to, put it very simply, so if the decision, if it really comes down to this, are we dealing with a gap in the knowledge, which means is the team looking for expert solutions or somebody to fix their problems? Then it's clearly consulting. It's like, are we dealing with a gap in the conversation? Like, the team knows what to do, but probably they are not very productive in managing their meetings or managing the process. Probably I would say then it's a clear case for facilitation. But if we are dealing with a gap in how the team relates, communicates, and works together, I think then it's team coaching.
Thank you, Sudha. That was really sharp. And I think, like we say, facilitation is about, accessing the group wisdom. Fundamentally in coaching, the wisdom lies with the team in this case, or with the individual, and that's what we're trying to access. So in true coach style, let's really begin by doing a deep dive into the topic. So, Sudha, maybe I know you have a bit of a bad cough, but maybe I'd like to ask put this question to you again. What do we mean by complexity in the context of team coaching? And I think part of that you have addressed in your earlier answer. But is there anything you'd like to add when you say complexity? What are we talking about?
So when we say complexity, we are pointing to situations most often where the causes and effects are not very clear. It's not that we can, clearly say, oh, this is the solution for this issue. There are multiple perspectives that collide. We are talking about, where a solution can't be just simply imposed, but it has to be co-created or discovered together. I would like to refer to what you shared, Mahrukh, earlier on Peter Senghi's this popular one, right? Today's problems come from yesterday's solution. Most often in high stakes environment, when we have a quick fix in one function, it could create unintended consequences in other. Like, for example, I had this experience of coaching a startup team who was into the business of quick service supermarkets, like, neighborhood quick stores. It seemed to the team that it was, all their problems and delays, whatever that they were having, the team was looking at it as, okay, this one particular vendor related to the real estate deal is the problem for all that we are facing. But actually what happened is it's only during the team coaching that they realized that that could be one of the problems. But what actually is the problem is there was a pattern in which the team was actually functioning. Because it was a startup and it was a new team, rather young and passionate team, everybody was wanting to, prove and create visibility for themselves and grow. So they were all operating like a silo. Everybody were only concerned about what they were doing. And when I mapped the communication, like, simply who talks to whom, how frequently, and all of that, it was very clear. Like, operations would just most often all their meetings are within operations, real estate within themselves, and the sourcing department within themselves. Cross-functional communications weren't happening. And then all the teams knew and they were sensing an issue with the internal capabilities of a real estate vendor in terms of their deliverables. They doubted whether this is the right vendor for us to scale up. But none of them would voice this. None of them would talk about this because this vendor was referred by one of the promoters. So all of them would function in such a way that I don't want to be the bad person to call this out. And nobody escalated. And yet everybody knew that how it is affecting each one of them. I'm talking about this because many times in high stakes environment, and especially when the time pressure is high, when there are KPIs they are chasing, when there are funds that's getting eroded, and then lot of stakeholders that they have to answer to, most of the time, what they lean into is quick fixes. And nobody stops to understand, okay, now this fix, what impact will it have on the other parts of the system? So I know a long answer for a question like complexity, because that's how complex it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudha. And so there seems to be a lot of, in a sense, underlying, nuances, dynamics that people don't want to talk about. And Ramesh, this question is to you, so what do we mean by high stakes? is there are obviously there are certain visible high stakes, but then there are these very nuanced, under the waterline, unsaid situations that also are high stakes. So when we say high stakes, what exactly do we mean? What are the kind of examples that that actually define a high stakes team coaching intervention? Or are all team coaching interventions high stakes?
So to me, see, it is just the way I look at it, every team coaching intervention is high stake. Okay, there are complexities like what Sudha was talking about. The only thing that varies is the level of trust that people have between themselves. So the example that Sudha gave was a typical elephant in the room situation. Nobody names it. So complexity increases when trust level reduces. I think that's the way I look at it. So it's really about how much of trust is there. If there is trust, there is really no complexity. When people are open, they're willing to share, they're willing to disagree, they're willing to, fight it out, but at the end of it, agree on something and go out and actually execute it. Now, that is what trust means, right? That is what commitment means. If that is there, then nothing is complex. I think the true complexity comes, to my mind, is primarily based on the level of trust and safety. How safe do people feel?
Yeah.
You're on
Mahrukh?
mute. You're on mute, Mahrukh.
Yes, Priya, would you like to add to that? Yeah.
I just want to add a little bit there. One of the things that we keep in focus when we are doing a systemic team coaching intervention is what is it that we are trying to solve here, right? An organization wants to get to a certain goal. Is that the systemic team coach's role? Not really. That's not the focus. The focus is in how does the team work together so the team finds a way to get to that goal. And so when you're looking at a team vis-a-vis an individual, there are multiple people in the same room you're working with. And everybody has their own way of how to get to that goal. So there's a lot of pulls and pushes and underlying currents which come with hierarchies. Your boss is also sitting along with you in the room. So how much can you say? And comes down to safety, trust, of course. And so some of these things become very evident in the room. And for the first time, they're actually sitting there, and that's where courage comes, right? You're confronting these ways of working to arrive at what is it that you want. So as a coach, I'm focusing on, how are these people working? How are they talking to each other in the room? Why is it complex? Where's trust? Right? So there's a little shift in the focus when we do team coaching.
Right. Thank you, Priya. So Bharti, I think, again, it's been partially answered. Bharti has raised a question saying, how will a participant experience facilitation versus team coaching? And she says, from what Sudha has said, am I right in understanding it as facilitation would focus on a topic and work towards giving clarity to participants with respect to that topic, whereas team coaching would necessarily mean solving an issue that the participants are collectively facing? Right? So it's basically addressing those elephants in the room.
So,
Yes,
you know what? Here's my take on this, Mahrukh. I don't think we should worry about that distinction.
Okay.
Right? It's not important. It is just, in whatever you do, there has to be some structure. So that's why facilitation, I would define that as facilitation, if you like to call it that. Other than that, trying to kill yourself, trying to figure out whether you're facilitating or coaching is. So the first time I figured it out was when I had to apply for my ACTC, and they ask you in that, right? So I had to figure out how much of this is facilitation. And I really didn't know. So I just put a number which I thought was right. So that's it. So actually it doesn't really matter. I think what Priya and Sudha was saying, finally, it's about just just your ability to still be a mirror. And I think that is really what it is. Finally, that's what that's when the penny drops. Can you be a mirror for the group there? Whatever you do to take it forward.
Right. And so we don't need to really worry about the semantics. Just show up there as a coach, because that's what we are when we are being mirrors, right? So, and this is to all of you. What are those typical challenges that you face? You talked about trust, you talked about safety. What else? What else are those really those bits that sometimes can even derail the process? Anybody can take this question.
There are lots of obvious challenges, right? Actually, the biggest derailer is getting calendar commitments, especially when you're working with large groups. If it is 4 or 5 people, it's a little easier. But if it is a larger group of 10, 12, sometimes 15 people in the group, and that's a big derailer, because there are situations where on a particular day, and generally, at least the style that I have is I prefer to do in-person sort of workshops while working with teams, rather than doing it virtually. So a couple of key stakeholders are not there on that day, and then everything that the team does or comes out with at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter really. So to me, that is the biggest challenge and the biggest derailer. So it's about how, contracting to make sure that everybody is there whenever we fix dates for, getting together as a group. So at least that's my experience.
That's interesting. I didn't see that one coming. But something that you said, that when there is only part of a group, a couple of key people aren't available, how do you contract before the group that whatever emerges has to therefore be acceptable to all? Or how does one deal with that?
That's a tough part, because it's easy for people in the room to say, what, I will let this individual know, or the individual even writes in to say, I'm sorry, I cannot be here, but I'll make sure I check in with one of the group members as to what has happened. But invariably, it's the essence is not there, right? You get some English language which is transferred, but the essence of what actually happens in the room is not there. So it is a challenge.
Right.
I think I echo what Ramesh is saying. That's definitely one of the derailers, and especially if this is happening virtually, right? It's even more. In one of the very leading automobile manufacturing chain, this used to happen. And it was a very hierarchical organization. So it's like they will show up because they know attendance were being marked by the team, which will be reported into the regional head or something. So they know, oh, this is mandatory. So can you imagine from what space? So it's like, it doesn't matter whether I speak or, but I need to show up, which means I'm going to log into the meeting and I may just type saying that I'm at the dealer's place today, not possible to switch on the video. So this is a typical situation I faced. And then first I thought it was just one, and then I started seeing it repeated in a couple of teams because I was handling multiple teams for the same organization. Then I understood the culture, what's happening here. And that's when I knew that attendance is being tracked, because I used to find it, everybody were present in the meeting, but not physically, not on video, not participating. So I had to actually call this out to the team, saying that, it's almost like they were like, whether I participate or not, it doesn't matter. They are all here discussing. And, over-reliance on the team leader. That's another culture in the hierarchical setup. It's the team leader and the most dominant voices in the room. I think they will all decide and we are just going to follow. So that's the pattern I was noticing. And then I had to share it. And then ask the team as to how do we work with this challenge? And that's when, people openly started sharing. No, we were only told that we should definitely attend. And then, so you had to again, go back to contracting. In fact, I would like to share something that I learned from Ramesh. Ramesh is the one who told me ABC. Always be contracting. Whenever there are issues like this, go back to the contract. Go back to the stakeholders. Go back to everybody to contract. Now, what do we want to do? How do we want to deal with this? What are we expecting?
Thank you, Ramesh and Sudha. Priya, any other challenges that you think that tend to emerge?
So the commitment to working together shows up in different ways. One of it is scheduling. They don't turn up. One of them, they turn up and not fully there. So sometimes, they are there because they think, it's a good thing to have, a good thing to do. We're all working together. Just being in the room, the assumption is, we are a good team. And for a team coach, all of this is very interesting data, because everything that's happening in the room is telling you something about how the team is working. And one of the biggest challenges is getting them to commit to what they say they will do. Commit to being in that room, not just physically, but also participating. More importantly, commitment to the larger goal. So as a team, a systemic team coach, one is spending quite a lot of time to arrive at what does the team want to achieve as an outcome, and really speak about what is the importance of this for the team and for the organization. So it's only when they put their stake on the ground, is there some commitment coming. And that's something that we have to keep revisiting. Why are we doing this? Until that is clear and the goals are clear, there's not going to be much involvement here. So for me, the biggest work before starting is this contracting piece, right? The goals that we're contracting for. And that can take sometimes even a full day or a half day to really arrive, because like we said, they're all pulling in different directions. Everybody wants different things. Connecting to that larger purpose of why we are here and what can be achieved is a big challenge.
Yeah, you've raised a very important point, which Sudha also touched on, in this multi-layered contracting that team coaching requires. So can any of you talk us through what is the process? What is the flow of a typical team coaching intervention?
Yeah, and I actually, hopefully that will also address some questions that Jalaja and Anu has put up here. Nupur's question is slightly different, but so you are actually contracting at two levels, not only with the team, but also with the system that they're part of, right? And I think the fundamental rule that a team coach needs to remember is it is the responsibility of a team to do that contracting. So the coach is only facilitating the outcomes, and the coach facilitates two levels of contracting. One is the business context. So as a group, as a team, what is the outcome that they want? So if it's a 6 months engagement, at the end of 6 months, what do they really want to see happening for themselves, which is typically competency 3, right? The second level of contracting you're doing is for that outcome to happen, what is the change in behaviors that the team needs to start displaying? And that is truly what the team coach is working on. The team is watching for themselves. And, I think it is, yeah. So Jalaja's question. So you're asking the team to be their referee. So if you're saying this is the behavior that we're going to show, if somebody is not showing it, how are you going to? So you're also helping the team understand, agreeing. So you're contracting with the team saying, if somebody is showing that behavior, how are you going to acknowledge it? Because sometimes they may not even know they're doing it, right? So how do you acknowledge it? If somebody is not displaying what is agreed as a behavior, which will help us as a group get to our outcomes, how are you going to flag it? And that is the tricky part. So as a team, they can actually agree on some methods of flagging off without hurting the other individual or being blunt or making, bringing in rifts in the team and things like that. So something as simple as, one team actually said, you know what, we'll use green, yellow, and white, red cards. So if somebody is not displaying the behavior that they committed to, you hand over the red card. If somebody is showing the behavior or you want to acknowledge it, hand over a green card. The yellow card is saying that I'm not sure whether what you're doing is right or is going to support us or not. So there is an opportunity for a conversation, right? So that's what you're enabling the team to do. That is between themselves. Now the challenge sometimes is with the system, which is the system that they're part of. How do they contract with that group? So that's the other piece which you're helping the team contract with. So one of the approaches to doing it is saying, what is known as outside in. Go and ask them, what do you expect of us? Open up a conversation, so that each of the stakeholders has an input into this process, so that their what do you call it, expectations are also taken care of. That also gives the team an opportunity to negotiate. If they don't agree with that expectation, they have an opportunity to negotiate. So you're working with those two levels actually. So one is the team outcome, which involves the team going out and actually asking, what do you expect of us from their stakeholders, building that into the outcome they want. And the second piece is the behavior piece.
So, Ramesh, the example you shared presupposes a certain level of trust that has been built up through the process. So, taking a step back, how do you create that psychological safety, especially like with Sudha said, the team leader is also typically in the room, and also drawing upon Nupur's question a little bit, where you're also talking about there could be certain hidden agendas, there could be certain unstated agendas. So how do you get the team to a point where they're even willing to, whatever the system may be, but call out what is dysfunctional?
So it is a challenge, and I'll go back to what Priya said a little while ago, right? What is the role of the coach is to put out there what you're seeing and sometimes not seeing, what you're sensing. So there is, this very esoteric term called wide-angle empathy, right? Which I fully don't understand myself, but essentially it's the ability of the coach to understand, the or empathize with the broader need of the ecosystem, and then be able to challenge the team in terms of saying, what is really happening here? If this is what needs to happen, what is really happening here, right? So it is that, and the simplest. I mean, I think the simplest way to put this across is what both Priya and I love to use this term. It's called notice, share, and ask. Anything that you see, which you see is happening. So it could be a pattern, and you sometimes notice what is not happening also. So the elephant in the room is a great example. Everybody senses it, including as a coach, you're sensing there is silence somewhere. There is some discomfort. Ask. They may say it, they may not say it, and that's okay. Right? So every question you ask, put it there without any expectation, right? And those are some of your basic tenets of being a coach. Intuition, lay it out there without any expectation and see what emerges. If it emerges, well and good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's okay too. So that's what. So we're not trying to fix anything. I think that's the biggest shift we need to make. It is, what seems obvious. We have this, we feel the need to fix it. And, and that is, in a way, a leading indicator or a leading question, so to say, right? You're leading the team into a way you want them to. So you don't want to fix it. You're asking the team, how do you want to fix it? I'm seeing this happening. How do you want to fix it? They may agree, they may not agree, and that's okay. You're on mute, Mahrukh.
Couple of questions that are popping up in response to what you've just said. Neeta has asked, as a follow-up to Jalaja's question, how do you draw participants who deal with insecurities, introversion, being put down, being ignored?
Yeah, I'd like to just share some
Yes.
experience that I have had. This also sort of answers another question where there's one person whose voice is louder than the others. It could be because of their designation, their role in the team. It could be, it's just their way of communicating. We spent, like I said, considerable amount of time to arrive at what is the goal that or the outcome that the team wants. We spent equal amount of time to figure out how should we be working together to achieve this, right? The two levels of contract that we're speaking. So this, how should we be working together, is dealt with very explicitly, in detail. So it's like saying, if I listen, is something that, we should all be good listeners. That's a good thing to have. But what does it really mean in terms of behavior? How will I listen? So we're really going down to a couple of levels there to help them articulate for themselves, what does listening look like for this team in this room? And so we are inadvertently seeking permission, and they're seeking permission with each other to call it out. If it happens, it doesn't happen. So one of the teams that we were working with, there was one person sitting there and he said, oh, no, I'll just be quiet. He was the head of the team. He was the team leader. He said, I'll just watch. Right? But he was speaking the most. He was speaking the most because he felt he could speak and nobody was going to stop him. And true enough, that was what was happening. And so for us as coaches, if we didn't want to fix it and we see this, we're calling it out, right? We're saying no to share and ask. We're saying, this is what we agreed as ways of working. What should we do? Not what should I do? What should the team together do? And eventually, we allow for that conversation to emerge. And that's where we hold space as coaches, right? We are saying that if somebody speaks up, we are also taking care that there is no pushback in a way that is demeaning. So the rules and the ways of working, quite a lot of time, Mahrukh, we spent. And that in some ways helps take care. So, one of the questions we ask is, what if someone is very quiet? Is the team okay to call out and ask? Can we ask, why is this person quiet? Can we invite quiet people into? So all is clearly explicitly stated. And sometimes we'll have to state it more than once because we'll forget.
And this is also a continuous process because there will be new
Absolutely.
nuances which will emerge
Absolutely.
that you hadn't anticipated at the beginning. And that's why we always be contracting.
Absolutely.
Okay. How does this contracting, while it's in a team coaching context, there is this contracting that's happening. Have you ever noticed that something else happens outside? And within the team coaching, people are showing up differently because there is this contracting that has happened, and that interplay between outside the team coaching room and, within it. Is there any kind of dissonance or Ramesh, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So there will be, it is bound to be that way. It's very easy to agree in a group because you think it's possible, so it is not because of wrong intent. I think that's the most important thing to remember. So the team, people agree or disagree not because of wrong intent. It's just that they think it's possible. But when they go out and reality hits them, they start behaving differently. So that's what really happens. So one of the things, at least as a practice, we do is to do one-on-one conversations too. So even when you start, for example, at least before we start, we generally do a one-on-one conversations and two things to try and understand from that conversation. One is, so it's not a diagnostics conversation. It's more like saying, checking in and asking them, what do you think is working for you? What's not working for you? So getting a sense of where each individual in that group is. The second thing you're asking them is that, you're going to be working together as a team, and this is my role as a coach. How do you like me to help you in that room? What works for you? What is not going to work for you? So some people will say, I'm typically quiet. It's okay, but if you think it's important for me to say something, let me know. Ask me to speak, step in and speak. There have been many situations where individuals have said, please invite me, I'm shy. So you can actually contract individually as to how you want to engage with each one as a coach. And we also do a check-in after a group session, because that's when a lot of processing has happened. So it's good to just check in. How did it go? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? Things like that. So you have the option of checking in one-on-one, and as long as it is transparent. I think the most important thing is doing conversations where everybody knows you're doing it, rather than doing it without. So when there is no transparency, so one of the most important things as a coach you have to remember is you have to role model. You are the role model. So making sure there is transparency in everything that you do, whomever you speak with, all of that, everybody knows that. Yeah. So yeah, that's one thought.
Thank you. And Rohini has a follow-up question to this, where she says, how do you deal with confidences that emerge in one-on-one conversations that affect the team members' experience of being in the team and hence the team's performance? Priya, would you like to take that? Or?
Yeah. So one of the things that we call out is what we speak in those one-on-one conversations is not going to be, the content is not going to be shared. But the interesting thing is when you're working with, say, 15 people in a team intervention or 20, you will start observing themes. Now that theme is something that we call out, will bring to the see, one of the things, very important thing about systemic team coaching is to bring out what is implicit as explicit. Is out in the open, then they will find a way to deal with it. A lot of these things happen because there is a culture within which is not seen, heard, assumed. So we say this, we'll observe themes, and these themes we will bring out into the open. So if it is only one person who's feeling, oh my God, this person in that conversation is always hijacking the conversation, I don't get to say. So then we ask, what is it that you want us to do? How do you want us to address this in the large group setting? Sometimes these one-on-one conversation, Mahrukh, also goes down to an individual level. Like there may be some personal issues, belief systems, trust as an individual. So this individual takes a little more, we spend a little more time to work on their own individual challenges, need not necessarily be, it may appear that it is because of the team, but it's actually an internal conflict or internal challenge.
Thank you, Priya. So it's really themes, which is what we also work in any of the kind of formats of coaching. So Shraddha has a question where she says, does learning from one another happen in team coaching, and if this helps? Sudha, would you like to respond to that?
Repeat that question.
Does learning from one another happen in team coaching, and if this helps?
Yes, definitely. I think, in fact, I would say one of the outcomes as a coach, while we don't have any agenda as to what the outcomes could be, but I would say one of the good outcomes a team coach should also have is helping the teams learn from one another. Right? I remember Ramesh many times mentioning team coach is the mirror for this entire system. And then like how Priya and Ramesh were using this whole thing, right? You notice, share, and ask. Through this process, what you're actually trying to do is help them learn. Help them learn what their patterns, that their themes, their style of communication, their style of non-communication, how they actually deal with agreements and disagreements. In fact, one interesting instance that comes to my mind, right, when I'm talking about this, um, it's like, it's so interesting, this hierarchical organization I was talking about. Um, so every time the conversation was always leader-led. So this is a pattern I was seeing. But as part of our, contract, this was not a goal at all. Like, are we going to have equal participation? All these things the team did not speak about because they're very comfortable in this kind of setup. It's always leader-led. Leader directs the conversation. Leader brings the topic for the conversation. And then most often they would, sir him and then say, yes, sir, yeah, this is, they just provide data. Or if the leader is expecting some timelines, like typically when I watch some of the meetings, it is like, most often the leader is talking and then others are just giving the data and then they're just accepting whatever the leader is saying. I have no idea. The next 2 weeks, this needs to be sorted out. This issue needs to be sorted out. So the leader is not even listening. What are the challenges? But just gives a target. This needs to be solved in the 2 weeks. And then the team says, yes, sir, yes, sir. And then they go back. And then it's interestingly, it so happened. 2 sessions later, the leader was not there, he was traveling, and then the team was there. And then during the course of conversation, couple of, I would say, the silent observers, then they started speaking up about a particular issue. And when they started speaking up, it became so clear to the team that one of the data point that they were not considering at all, like they had launched a new vehicle which had a very new feature, uh, which was not probably explained very well, which was used by these drivers who drive those long fleet vehicles, kind of. So there was a simple button. Every time when they switched on, they are supposed to press that. But if they don't press, the vehicle would stop in the next 2 minutes. So drivers were not aware of this, and then vehicles would stop, and then calls were getting escalated to the call center that the vehicle is switching off too often, and then the vendors, the customers were very, very unhappy because somebody was managing a large waste management of a state. Somebody else was using it for building construction. So just imagine the chaos and the multiple effects this could have. And then they had no idea. This team, one of the KPIs they were working through the team coaching was to reduce customer complaint and turnaround times. And then to increase their wallet share because they were already losing out to their competitors. So many things were discussed in the last so many sessions, but this one was never discussed. And this was such an important data. Through the sharing, they came up with a driver training plan, that they had to train all the drivers on this new feature, which will help them to know how to operate, which can simply, avoid so many calls coming to the call center. And, the number of hours the fleet doesn't operate is another metric they were, measuring. It was so surprising for me to see this, right? From this whole yes, sir, and then just answering to the questions, not sharing. And to this person, they had no idea how crucial this information that they were holding on to. It was not that with any intentions they were holding on to it. It is just that the culture, the way the team operated, what was comfortable to them was actually coming in that way. It was very interesting to note, how they realized this and how they, in fact, the team themselves came up and said, oh my God, mentioning to that person how important this information was and why didn't you share this all this time? And then they started discussing about how they need to actually ensure everybody speaks in the meeting. It was all their own bit. I didn't have to do anything.
So there's a question. Thank you, Sudha, for that. There's a question that Rohini is raising, that She says, in the team coaching sessions, I was under the impression the team coach takes the lead of the meeting, not the team leader. Is that not so?
The team takes the lead. It's neither the coach nor the team leader. Because when they come into the room, they're equals, right? And that's an expectation we set, that everybody is equal. I mean, it's part of creating safety. So who leads is the team itself as a unit. So we are looking, as a team coach, we are looking at the various individuals in the room is one unit. Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
the difference.
Thank you, Priya. So let's in the interest of time, let's move to really the ROI on team coaching. So how do you measure the impact or return on investment of team coaching? Ramesh, would you like to take that one?
So what you're doing, and that's true for, like I said, right, in any coaching engagement, the first thing you're doing is agreeing with the team as to what is the outcome they want. And the good news is, with most teams, there is clarity on an outcome which is a business outcome. So it is measurable. So in team coaching, actually, that way ROI is reasonably easy to measure. The team themselves will do it for you. So you don't have to really worry about ROI, unlike individual coaching, because when you're working with individuals, ROI becomes an issue. It's not necessarily a metric, and it's not necessarily a metric which that particular individual completely owns. Whereas in a team scenario, generally that metric or the outcome that they're looking for, they totally own. So that way it's quite easy to sort of work on that. So when you talked about the two levels of contracting, the business piece of the contracting is this.
So Ramesh, one of the tenets of team coaching is when you're done with the intervention, the team itself needs to be capable of coaching itself. Is there any way of measuring, how long that if they're able to do it, or, does that continue post the intervention?
See, and so the definition of behavior, and see, what are you really coaching on? You're coaching on behavior change, right? I mean, that is the fundamental thing you're really coaching on. You're using all this data and information to help them understand and shift in behavior change. And that's why in team coaching, and probably the other difference between team coaching and facilitation is typically team coaching engagements span a period of time. It is 3 or sometimes 6 months, because that's the amount of time it takes for the team to get to a business outcome or actually manage an outcome which is needed, and in the process make changes to themselves. So as with all behavior, if they consistently follow it over a period of time, it becomes behavior, ingrained behavior. And they also know now, they also know how to say, flag it off if it's working, not working. So is there a way to track it beyond that? Actually, I've never tried it, so I don't know.
Right. So there are new ways of working that have emerged in the
Generally,
team, and
yeah,
therefore
generally.
they become sustainable over time, because
Yeah.
that's how they're showing up differently now.
Yeah.
Yes, Priya, you'd like to add something?
And I think the team coach also, like we said, it's role modeling in many ways at many levels. Team coach is also acknowledging the change in behavior that's happening, right? Because they might not recognize it for themselves. So we are watching, we are noticing, so we are sharing, hey, this is changing. We can see now how easy it is to just get into this topic. That's one thing, Mahrukh. And the second piece is when we are about to close the engagement, we are spending just as much time that we spend to contract organizational level business outcomes, along with the ways of working, 2 levels of contract. We are also looking at how now going forward, right? How is it that the team, so they're contracting for how they will try and sustain this momentum, how they will flag off, how they will continue, how they will acknowledge when they see. So that's a big conversation in the end as well.
Right, right. That's really useful to know, because then there's a kind of natural embedding of the new behaviors that have been learned and a commitment to continue using them. So, question to any of you all, what do you think is the most critical coaching skill that comes into play in team coaching?
I think Priya and Ramesh would agree with me. I think for me, I think the most important is presence, Mahrukh. Especially in a complex, high stakes environment, um, where multiple people and multiple inputs are coming. I think presence is what allows you to pause. And I strongly feel it is also contagious, like how Priya said, slowly the team learns to pause along with you over a period of time. It doesn't happen immediately, but I think this presence is what helps you to listen um, to what is being said, what is not being said, uh, to notice the patterns, the themes, uh, to kind of sense what's like emerging in the room in the moment, um, the dynamic shifts. Um, I think I would say this is the foundation on which anything else can be built.
And I love what you said, the team learns to pause with you. So they start role modeling those behaviors as well. Anybody else would like to add to this?
Yeah, definitely presence. And and what's important because of that is that it helps to have a co-coach. It's very difficult for one individual to be fully present all the time, especially in some situations where you're doing, when you're facilitating, for example, right? There could be some component of facilitation. A co-coach is very, very helpful. So it is and the larger, and somebody has a question. They're saying optimal size of the team.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a really optimal size. It is it's a manageable size. I think that's the way you should look at it. But either case, I think it's important to always work with a co-coach. It really, really helps.
Thank you. Thank you for also addressing and noticing and addressing that question that had popped up earlier. So what was the steepest part of your own learning curve as a team coach?
Yeah,
Let your ego aside. I think. At least, yeah, I think, we sort of see at least my personal problem is I've done jobs or roles like most of the teams I've worked with, I already know what they do, right? So just to keep aside and get into a space of not knowing and not wanting to become a consultant there, I think that was the the most toughest thing for me.
Learning to trust the not knowing.
Yeah.
Priya?
For me, I learned a lesson from the team that I worked with. Right? I felt this, intuitively. I felt this team really will benefit if they knew how to empathize with each other. And this was a very strong intuition for me. And a team coach, if you're working with a co-coach, you're actually prepping a little bit before you go, unlike in a one-on-one session where you're completely there. Here because you're observing some things pattern, there's some prep with the co-coach that you do before you go in. I was saying, I think this team will benefit from empathy. We must do a little bit of talk on that. And empathy is a topic that's very close to my heart. I work a lot on EI space, and it's like big thing for me. So I went into the room and said, okay, I didn't say we must do. I was reminding, and I was checking. Okay, let's check on empathy. And there was not one person who aligned with that thought. I said, empathy not required. We don't need it. I don't think we need it. So, it's not something that you decide for the group. we must remember our role. We can't decide for the group. So we are placing it there and asking, are they going to pick it up or not? Not one. And I took it as personal affront to me. I said, fundamentally, you need that to work together as a team. So it was my need, to make sure that they understood this and to hold that neutrality in a space where many people are saying many things, many people are pulling in different directions, not to get sucked in, not just from the team's requirements or team dynamics, but also sucked in from your needs for what you think is important. So I came back quite disturbed that this idea didn't take off. But then that was a big lesson for me, Mahrukh, saying it's not your agenda. Though we know it cognitively, right?
Yeah.
We all know it.
Thank you for sharing that, Priya. Thank you so much. Sudha, you wanted to share something?
Yeah. Two things. The first thing, I learned it really hard. So I want to share about it. It's about recontracting and contracting as many times. While I know it very theoretically, I know the importance of it, but when it plays out right, though deep down, now, it's time to recontract, or it's like, no, I need to have this conversation with all of them. Sometimes it is not very conducive, right? Like either the team leader or, the sponsor, all of them are not showing up in a way ready for recontracting. Like probably 2-3 times you have spoken about it, but maybe that's the crux of the issue. So there was a time in my initial time, I think my first or the second client. So I kind of knew it, but I was not acting on it. And hence, from that, what I picked is as a team coach, I also need to honor what I'm deeply feeling. It doesn't matter. You have, revisited it twice, thrice. So there's no limit to it. Like somewhere you kind of pull yourself back. Okay, now what is the sponsor going to think about me here? Like every time when I'm now is he going to look at me as somebody who is incapable of running? Why is she coming back with this? Are they going to make it about me? So it was more like a self-doubt for me. But I felt that really costed a lot in terms of time. And then it was like, because there was a huge issue there, ultimately I had to do it a little later. So you can't escape it. So that's one hard lesson I learned. And then the other one is to show up more courageously, especially this large automobile manufacturing, which is fully dominated by, atypical male hierarchical organization. I didn't have a co-coach. I'm the only woman. And you can see the uncomfortableness for some of them to deal with a coach who is a woman, the dynamics of it. So sometimes I think you need to be more courageous even to share what you're noticing on that aspect. The complexity is not just about sometimes it's also about how they relate to the coach and what's coming in the way of them to express themselves and things. These are two things I have really learned.
Thank you, Sudha. Listening to you, basically you're saying trust your intuition, but like Priya said, hold it lightly. Right. Okay. So one last question before we jump into all the questions that that have popped up or have been sent earlier. Selling team coaching. What is the most effective way of selling this as a solution? Is it typically to existing clients where you see a need and they already trust you? What is the tipping point that allows a client to buy team coaching?
So experience has been that it's very difficult. I mean, foot in the door doesn't work with team coaching. Partly because I think as a single, investment per se, it's generally much more than people would pay for one-on-one coaching and things like that. So one-on-one coaching, they have a choice. If they don't want to spend that much money, they'll reduce the number of individuals they send for coaching, right? But in team coaching, it doesn't work that way. So I think so complete greenfield selling is extremely difficult. It has never worked, at least for us. The easiest opportunity that I've seen is when people come in with a group of individuals. So there's a group and you see that large part of the group is a team. Actually, then, starting the conversation on saying, rather than, helping them understand how team coaching is going to be probably more effective in that situation than just one-on-one. So there have been situations where you do some one-on-one too, but you do also, they are happy to try out team coaching. So I think that's the easiest way to sort of switch. The other is when you worked with somebody for some time and you start knowing the organization well, you know there are opportunities there. You can give them examples of where you think possibly it'll work. And I think they bite. That's when they bite.
Thank you, Ramesh. Sudha, Priya, any other perspective? Okay, so let me just pick up some of the questions that are in the chat, and then we'll go back to the other questions. Narendra has asked, what is the process to diagnose the issues in a team? What tools does a coach have?
My pet topic.
Yep.
I don't believe in diagnostic tools. I mean, it's as simple as that, because I think the most powerful diagnosis is what really happens in the room. And that's what people relate to, because everything else is theory, right? I mean, you can do there are lots of instruments out there which you can use and throw a lot of data, but then you're just doing presentations. It means nothing to the individual in the room or to the group in the room. But when you're seeing something happening in front of you, that's far more powerful. So diagnosis is more in terms of what does a team want to really shift, which comes through conversations. I think just those one-on-one conversations will give you a very good sense of what really needs to shift for the team. So that's my view. So I'm not a fan of tools.
Are there tools that one could access rookies like me?
I wouldn't even know. There are quite a lot. So, for example, so we do an instrument called TAM, okay, Transformation Alignment Mapper. There is a team component to it. So there's an individual and a team thing, right? But we've never used that. I think, yeah, Belvin Priya has put there. So there are lots of assessments out there which can be used on teams. At least personally, I've not been very, very happy with it. So I'm not, and also fundamentally, I have this disconnect of boxing people, whether it is teams or individuals, by using assessments. So why not give them the flexibility of growing, right, rather than boxing them in with an instrument.
Right.
So that's the other way to look at it. So that's my belief system.
Fair. And there are frameworks like Perel or the 5C model that one could read up and then take what one can from there.
No, those
Right.
are not assessment
No.
models.
They're
They're
frameworks
just
for team
frameworks.
coaching.
Yeah, frameworks you could
Absolutely.
bring into your coaching. That's
Correct. So Rohini has asked, in terms of long-term ROI, how does coaching leaders lead to lead their team with empathy and agreement compared to leading teams where the leader might not be the best kind of leader? Rohini, if you want to unmute yourself and maybe explain the question a bit, unless Ramesh, if you've understood it, that's
I mean, to me, that's actually judgmental. How do we define who's good or bad? It's for the team to decide, right? There are disruptive leaders. I think I think Sudha, Priya all gave examples of that. But that's visible behavior. So how do you help the team address it rather than you trying to address that?
right.
Yeah, I think that's what diagnosis does. We tend to decide what is right for the team and then go into an engagement trying to fix it, which may not work. I don't know whether, Rohini, that was your question, but
No, I wasn't. It wasn't suggesting that the coach had to make that decision or judgment. I was just curious from a corporate perspective, whether if a corporate was considering, say, team coaching versus leadership coaching. To me, intuitively, it makes sense to have a leader who knows how to lead their team with all the things that you're helping the team to learn to do. Because the leader themselves can't do those things. Once the team leadership engagement is finished, they could easily slide back to their old ways of, leading with expectations rather than agreements and things like that. The kinds of things that you've just so eloquently talked about as a panel. So I was just curious, and I realize it's not the coach's decision or judgment, but I just wondered if you were speaking to a corporate, whether you had a sense of which one should come first or which one should come as a bigger priority from an ROI perspective.
ROI perspective, team coaching is always more impactful. I think there's no two doubts about it. It's always more impactful and far more sustainable than individual one-on-one leadership coaching.
And just to kind of pitch in here, it's also what is the organizational agenda? Is the organizational agenda to address that particular leader's developmental journey, or is there a wider agenda in terms of certain team goals that they may want to address?
Absolutely.
Okay, Neeta has said to me, dealing with bringing in behavioral issues that need to be addressed while dealing with seemingly only operational or process issues is complex. Any insight here will help.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Neeta, would you like to come on camera and share what exactly you're
Yes.
asking?
Yes. So the way I view it is that if it is, say, a goal that needs to be achieved, some people might look at it as only an operational issue that needs to be addressed. Would that fall in the realm of team coaching in the first place? Yeah. And how do you then, when you actually see something that's more behavioral than the issue itself, which is operational, how do you bring that up? I guess that's a sense of team coaching, I guess, right? But any insight?
That is that is
sorry.
essentially it. So every problem statement is operational or strategic, whatever. It's a business problem always. So you're helping the team sort of translate that into what it means for them and what it means in terms of behavior. And you're working with that. So yeah, that's the essence of team coaching.
And in a sense, it's what we say in individual coaching as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're coaching the person takes care of the problem. So here the person is the team, you're taking care of the behaviors that lead to that outcome. But getting to that outcome, operational or otherwise, is the team's focus.
Thank you.
There are some more questions around the coaching accreditation. What are the steps to take for the ICF team coaching accreditation? Would anyone like to take that?
Not sure the latest
Oh,
ones.
okay, so Sudha, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think it's still the same, but I would definitely encourage them to check the ICF website. It's 60 hours of classroom training that you need to complete on team coaching, and 5 engagements, team engagements that you need to complete. And post which you also need to have supervision of 10 hours for team coaching. And then you write your exam. And then you need to submit. Like it's unlike your one-on-one coaching. When I say 5 engagements, you need to have written proof, valid proof, which means your client give you a document saying that you did coach with them from this date to this date for a period of this and involving, so, not any details about the team or team members' names, but, so many members in the team and things like that. Typically a start date, end date, number of team members. And then it's a very detailed application you submit, unless for your one-on-one coaching, which means you are expected to note down, what was this team coaching all about? What did you achieve? So it's a very detailed application. So I would in fact encourage, if you're starting your journey, when you start working out, document as many things that you can, because it takes a while. I think I did my training in 2020. I got my credentials in 2024. It took that while for me to get my 5 engagements. And then I'm really thankful that I had good documentation, because the application is very detailed.
Thank you, Sudha. We are at 8 o'clock. There are a couple of questions that still haven't got answered, but I'm going to ask Shrikant to come in, because I think Shrikant is now looking at me with his hand up. Yes, Shrikant.
No, I just wanted to give an input on the ACTC
Okay.
credentials. There are 3 ways of doing it. One is, if you go through the AATC path, which is the program is accredited by ICF, then minimum 60 hours of coaching education. There are 2 more ways of doing it. You can do a 30-hour program, which is either approved or not approved, any team coaching, and then the number of assignments are more. The coaching supervision remains the same, I guess. And you can also do the same thing without any coaching education, with a lot more team coaching engagement. So that there are another couple of ways. But the easiest way to do is what Sudha said: go work with a accredited program and then do the 5 assignments, do your coaching supervision, which is part of it, and then
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Shrikant. Thank you so much. So we are at 8 o'clock, and I know I see a large number have already dropped off, but thank you very much for those who have stayed on. We will continue to just answer a few more questions that are left. If you'd like to stay on, please do. But if you need to drop off, thank you so much for being here this evening. So Priya, Ramesh, and Sudha, are we okay to go ahead for about another 10 minutes or so, 5 to 10 minutes? Just a few more questions. Riti, I see your hand up. Would you like to unmute? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. First and foremost, let me tell you that today was an aha moment for me, because somewhere the whole concept of facilitation and team coaching got really, really clear for me to a large extent. So thank you so much, Ramesh, Priya, and Sudha and Mahrukh, for really steering this conversation. The one thing that I picked up through this entire conversation, as someone who's done a lot of facilitation and group coaching, is that would it be right to say that the fundamental difference then between facilitation and team coaching is the absence of the objective of a transfer of any skill? For example, time management or, any such skill. Would that be right to say?
I think so. There's no transfer of skill.
So you're
Um,
looking at basically addressing business goals, business problems, business objectives, through a conversation which could be at multiple levels of interdependencies and things like that. Would that sum that well?
Yes. And you talked about goal, just to double click on that. The goal is what the team is deciding. So typically when you go in for a facilitated session, if you have a corporate engagement, they are telling you this is what needs to be the outcome in terms of some business outcomes here. So while you have that overarching goal, but your team coach is really focusing on what is the contract for, how do you behave, how do you connect with each other, how do you work together to be able to get that. So that's the focus, whatever be the business outcome that they come up with.
So
I hope
in a
that
way,
answers.
thank you, Priya. So Priya, for answering that. So in a way, it's going a step further in addressing the challenge, because eventually we come to a point where we're talking about the fact that there are interdependencies which become the challenge eventually. So, all right. Thank you so much for answering that. Thank you, Mahrukh.
Welcome. Nupur, Nupur's will be the last question we'll take from the group. And there's just one more question from what we've received earlier, after which we'll close this. Yes, Nupur, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is regarding the very beginning, when you even decide to take on a team. Have there been times where you've realized that they aren't essentially a team? I mean, they might have the same reporting manager, but the one or two experiences I've had, I burnt my fingers pretty soon. I didn't see a lot of overlap. They reported into a manager, therefore the manager wanted the ways of working to be smoother. There was dysfunction and toxicity in their relationship with each other. But when you really came to common goals, working with each other, having a lot of overlap in their day-to-day, there wasn't much. They really operated as silos and came together to report under this manager. So the very basic question for me sometimes is, are they even a team, and how do you define a team when you're taking on something for an engagement like this?
Nupur, when you said, you didn't see overlaps, for me, a team is which necessarily has interdependencies. So I don't see them being able to achieve a common goal without this interdependency. Then it's not a team. If just because they have a common reporting manager doesn't make them a team. I see a team having a lot of interdependencies. They have a shared goal. They can't achieve this goal without each other's inputs and them working together. I feel this is one of the important things as to how I would define it.
Thank you, sir.
And
Right?
actually,
Whether they
yeah,
realize it
yeah.
or not, they could be showing up as if there is no interdependencies. That's an altogether different thing. In fact, that's what then they need to be coached for. But if they don't have interdependencies, then they're not.
I'll actually give you an example of, so there was a team which is part of a GCC, right? And typically you have a center manager.
Yes.
And typically there is no reporting relationship or just a dotted line reporting relationship with the center manager. So they wanted to be coached. So what we did is actually help them define what they want to be coached on. So it was not a business outcome. In what the team ended up with defining for themselves is the common challenges that the center is facing in terms of saying that's what we want to work towards. How do we bring in, for example, more, how do we hire better? How are we going to be seen in this market as a brand? Things like that. So which is a common issue across. And none of it had to do with their KPIs.
Sure. That helps a lot. Thank you.
One of the questions that had been sent in earlier was, when there's a team with people at different levels, what kind of challenges do you face there, and how does one coach such a team?
Every team is at different levels in terms of hierarchy, different levels in terms of experience, different levels in terms of tenure in the organization. So all that is complexity. So that's, I think it's just a definition of complexity. I don't know whether there's any other way to look at it.
Okay. Madhu, do you spot any questions that have not been answered? Or I think there's a question that says, what is systemic coaching? But I think that's a topic for another evening.
Yes.
So I think
we're good.
Over to you, Madhu.
Yeah, I think we're good, Mahrukh, in terms of, and we're on top of the hour as well. So yeah, in closing, thank you so much, Mahrukh, for navigating this conversation. It's been so interesting for folks like me who've just completed training, yet to take up an assignment. So a lot of learning. And, I'd like to thank everybody here who stayed back to hear from our experts for sharing their experience and being so open about what was their steep learning curve. And, those are things that we're going to take back to say that it's okay. Yeah. So that's about it. Good night, folks. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining in.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you very
you.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you,
Thank
Mahrukh,
you.
Ramesh, Priya, and
Yes.
Sudha for making this happen for us. Thank
Yes.
you so much.
Very
Always a
much.
pleasure, Shrikant.